Misunderstanding is something that resonates with us all. Do you know what else is misunderstood? Nuclear energy. With an affinity for being environmentally conscious, energy production nowadays has taken a greener turn, with methods such as solar or wind power. But do you really think you could survive in a world where charging your phone depends on whether the sun is shining or if it's a windy day? Such methods are just, frankly, not enough, or at least not in the time being. The goal has always been centered on two things: continuous energy generation and carbon neutrality. And amongst all of the possible candidates, I think there is one promising contender for this. And you've guessed it, it's nuclear energy. It has the ability to generate electricity at all times throughout the day, with a carbon footprint at an all-time low. But before we get all excited, let me ask you the question. When you think of nuclear energy, what comes to mind? We often imagine horrific depictions of catastrophic events, of lands being desecrated by nuclear meltdowns, left to rot for several decades after. It's so sad that these are the immediate connotations that we jump to. It's so sad that it has gained such a bad rep. But these immediate connotations that we have learned to associate with nuclear energy might not be quite as they seem. Welcome to my episode of Mythbusters, where I uncover truths about 4 main misconceptions of nuclear energy. Myth 1. Are nuclear reactors just commercialized nuclear bombs? Perhaps one of the largest concerns and misconceptions is that it was a nuclear explosion that led to the downfall of the Chernobyl reactor. It is believed that nuclear reactors are all but a commercialized version of the weaponized bombs that we have come to fear so much, a gateway to a repetition of these horrific events. However, this is wrong, as the conditions needed to produce a nuclear explosion contradict with what a nuclear reactor is capable of providing on a fundamental level. In order to create a nuclear explosion in the first place, a vast amount of energy needs to be generated in a very short amount of time. This surge of energy is created by an instantaneous and uncontrolled series of fission chain reactions. Everybody, hold your hands out in fists. Now, separate them as far away as possible without hitting the person next to you, of course. That's basically what fission is. And this, therefore, explains why the fuel inside a nuclear bomb is so highly compacted. A nuclear reactor, on the other hand, is far too large to be able to provide the necessary heat or density requirements for these series of fission reactions to occur instantaneously. Therefore, a nuclear explosion as a result of a nuclear meltdown is impossible. As it turns out, what happened at Chernobyl was the result of a critical design flaw. It was a steam explosion, in fact, and not a nuclear one. It happened as a result of an oversight, causing an abnormally large buildup of steam inside the core, leading to a dangerously high increase in temperatures and pressures, causing the explosion. But since then, technology has improved drastically. Just take a look at mobile phones, cars, airplanes. And just like these, nuclear energy has evolved too. Technology has already progressed far beyond what it was several decades ago, at the dawn of Chernobyl or Fukushima. Nowadays, new standards for safeguarding and security have already been set for the nuclear power industry. Just take a look at the Canadian CANDO model, for example. It has 2 shutdown systems, shut-off rods that can be dropped into the reactor, and a poison system that pumps liquids into the reactor to prevent any further reactions from happening. Both of these mechanisms activate automatically upon the detection of an anomaly and require 0 power to operate. Myth busted. Myth 2. Won't the storage of nuclear waste pose just as big of an issue as the storage of any other waste? First and foremost, it's important to establish that nuclear energy is a very energy-dense resource. In fact, only a single pellet of uranium is needed to generate the same amount of energy as 1 ton of coal, 560 liters of oil, and over 480 cubic meters of natural gas. Now that's what I call a big difference. This, therefore, corresponds with very low waste production as well, especially in comparison to traditional forms of energy production, such as in coal-fired power plants. In fact, a commercially sized nuclear power plant only produces around 3 cubic meters of designated high-level waste annually. A coal-fired power plant, on the other hand, with the same production capabilities, produces 300,000 tons of ash and over 1 million tons of carbon dioxide annually. All of this is then released in the air haphazardly without much environmental consideration at all. And despite it being true that nuclear waste may need anywhere from 1,000 to 10,000 years before it can be deemed unreactive, the containers of waste are stored in specially designed storage tanks, deep below ground, where it will be safely contained for the rest of its lifetime. Myth busted. Myth 3. Won't the lives of the workers and civilians be put at risk by introducing all of this unnecessary radiation? Nuclear energy is one of the most heavily regulated industries. All systems of the nuclear power plant are maintained and inspected on a regular basis, updated when necessary, to ensure that all safety regulations are met accordingly. And the statistics reflect the effect of this as well, as did you know that nuclear power is actually one of the safest power industries out there? The annual death toll for nuclear energy, even while taking into account the casualties that resulted from both Chernobyl and Fukushima, still pales in comparison to the thousands of deaths that occur annually from collapsing tunnels, gas explosions, carbon monoxide poisoning in the coal mining industry, you name it. And it's not like nuclear energy is exposing our bodies to radiation that wasn't previously there before either. In fact, it was always around us. The sun emits radiation. The soil emits radiation. Even our food emits radiation. And all of this contributes to the phenomena that we might know as background radiation, which is considered to be a pretty unavoidable aspect to our day-to-day lives. Funnily enough, the dosage of radiation that you might receive from a nuclear waste reserve is actually estimated to be around 50 times less than that of the annual background radiation experienced. Myth busted. Myth 4. Isn't nuclear energy still a non-renewable resource? Won't it share the same fate as all the other non-renewable resources? Despite the vast amount of fuel that we can already recover from existing reserves, yes, it's true that nuclear energy is still a non-renewable resource, as materials such as uranium or plutonium are limited. But we can severely reduce this consumption rate, as nuclear energy can be recycled. It is estimated that around 96% of spent fuel is recyclable. Via the recycling process, valuable materials such as uranium or plutonium can be extracted, reprocessed, turned into brand new fuel rods. These new fuel rods have the same energy potential as 1/4 of a brand new batch. And it's not like this is a far idea either. Some countries, such as France, Japan, and Russia, have already adopted the recycling approach, sharing the incentive of further reducing their environmental footprint. Myth busted. Unintended consequences are inevitable, no matter the energy resource. Hydroelectric dams pose as a flood risk. Wind turbines kill birds from their rotating blades. In the end, it's all a matter of weighing the economics, environmental, and safety considerations against its downsides. But what I think separates nuclear energy from its alternatives is that it has always been subjected to what I believe is unjust judgment from people who fear the worst of the worst, another Chernobyl, another Fukushima. It's understandable that such disasters have created a lasting impression on us, leaving a permanent print on both history and our minds as one of humanity's biggest mess-ups. Nuclear energy may have had an unreputable past, but it is also a largely misunderstood one. Thankfully, however, science shows that these concerns may just be overly dramatized and excessively pessimistic speculations, stemming from a period of outdated technology and misconceptions. Ultimately, we should not let the roots of the past hold us back from further developing all that nuclear energy has to offer. As a step forward towards our goal of achieving carbon neutrality and a new generation of energy production. And that concludes today's episode of Mythbusters. Thank you for listening.